It was a brick by brick and a stone by stone. It wasn't done alone. Spirit is the...
Welcome. You are listening to Menstruction.
Watch this.
Relax, this is your safe place. Come and take solace. Here we build a better man. Pristine and so polished. Look at all the delusions we demolish. We found value everywhere, from the trades to the college. Strength without knowledge, brains without brawn. Like velvets with the builders every time the mic is on. Man, our confidence is swooning. We don't need an introduction. You know the sound. What you listening to? Menstruction. Greetings and salutations. Coming through your airwaves right now is your man, Black Velvet, and this is Black Velvet Radio. Nah, really, come on now, y'all know what it is. If you don't know because you've forgotten because it's been a minute.
Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is...
Stop. This is Menstruction, the place where the men of today and our cohorts fortify the structure that is you incorporated. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whenever you're listening. Listen, if you're new here, thank you for coming. You're gonna enjoy it. If you're returning, come on, man, you already know what we're about to get into. You know how we get down over here. Before we get into it, because I'm a little fired up and we really about to get after it, let's get our housekeeping out the way. If you haven't already, go ahead and follow, subscribe, however it works on the platform that you're listening on of your choice. Make sure you follow the pod, because you know it's only hot stuff coming at you. You already know that. It's only more tune for the head top. Are you understanding? Also, if you haven't already, you need to jump on over. I said hop, skip, and jump on over to the Menstruction Media YouTube channel that can be found at the handle at Beneficial Brick. Go ahead and put the subscribe. There's so much content over there. Of course, you have all of season 1. And if you ever wanted to know what your lovely, amazing, enlightened, handsome host looks like, you can see my beautiful face over there. I'm just saying, okay? Now, my beautiful souls and spirits, I'm talking directly to you all. Right now, I need you to listen up. I need you to put your ears on real nice. I want you to hear me and hear me well right now. I am disappointed. I had a moment I've never had in my life before, where I, very much so, was ready to throw in the towel for the fight. What fight am I talking about? The fight for us. You know, I get on this platform, I built this platform, I continue to speak on this platform, and will continue to speak on this platform for us. And when I say us, I'm talking about us with the melanin. I do it for us because I believe in my heart and my soul that we have so much to offer. History has only ever shown that. But for some reason, we have this disconnect where we have some untapped potential of our own that we don't seem to recognize. But we're real quick to place the blame and point the finger at others for impeding our progress. When the reality is, truth be told, on a day-to-day, on a person-to-person basis, the biggest obstacle to the black man is the black man, and the biggest obstacle to the black woman is the black woman. Yeah, we're going there today. This culture war bullshit nonsense. Is it too early to be cussing? This nonsense of the black man versus the black woman, I tell you what, it's accurate. It is the black man versus the black woman, except they got the sides wrong. The teams are incorrect. It's not the man versus the woman. It is the black man versus himself. It is the black woman versus herself. What am I talking about? Let's start here. You have currently, in the race for the presidency, finally, some might choose to use the term finally, a black woman has found herself in a position to be the leader of the free world, right? Great cheers for some. Now, some of us black women have been running our lives our whole lives, so this ain't nothing new, nor is it nothing spectacular. And it was still at the behest of a handoff from an elderly white man. So do with that what you will. It's not even about race. Let's not make it about race. This is ultimately not important. But Let's make it about us. It's about the community. So we finally got that. This woman has the gall and audacity to stand in front of the American people, but specifically us, and say that effectively nothing will fundamentally change, which is what her counterpart, our current president, essentially has been pushing for. Nothing will fundamentally change. At a time where we are most vulnerable and probably most need some change as people at large, as an American collective, as a working class bread and butter Americans, which disproportionately is us of the melanated skin. She basically got up there and said, I'm going to maintain the agenda of that. The same man who said, very aptly, if you don't know who you're going to vote for, you're not black. Which, if that didn't identify and highlight enough how much tokenism and how much our vote and our representation in the political space, the power of our vote, is trivialized and commoditized. That didn't tell you enough. She's maintaining those agendas. How extremely disappointing. All that rah-rah about getting a black woman into that position, into the White House. And of course, remember, they still need and desire majority of our vote to have their success. And there are still droves of you that are going out to support that. On those grounds, not on policy grounds, on the grounds of the other side, as Kendrick has so eloquently told us, they're not like us. They're not like us, okay? Let's go here. You have former president, the real first black president. Because some of you don't think it was lost to history. Some of you, I'm talking to some of you millennial niggas, if we're being honest, had the nerve and audacity to come out of your mouths back then saying that William Clinton was the first black president, which is by far one of the most egregious things I've ever heard. But we're not even going to get into that rant right now. But our actual first black president, Barack Hussein himself, has had the audacity and the gall to come out in a very public space on the stump for Miss Harris and her campaign to stand in front of multiple collectives of us, the melanated, to tell us, to lecture to us that we should not only, unquestionably, vote for Miss Harris, but that you should feel some degree of shame that you even consider that that's where you're submitting your vote. And those of you that are getting your mail-in ballots, your absentees that have already sent them in, should have already known what box you were checking. As if to say, once again, policy doesn't matter. As if to say, you have nothing that you should be considering. Your vote has been taken for granted. It is expected. And this is from your black president. Yeah, I said your, not mine. Yours. And I'm specifically speaking to you younger millennials, to older millennials that came out in droves in that 2008 and 2012 campaign to vote to get him in office. And I understand campaign sounded good. But especially in 2012, when you saw you got 4 years of nothing that materially changed for you, for us, for we, the melanated collective, and you still went back and put him in there for 4 more. And he still gave us nothing. And now you are inviting this man, you are allowing this man to stand up in front of us and lecture us and tell us about how important it is to have someone that looks like us to be in that space. He had 8 years to do it. What did we get? How many things that materially changed our communities and bettered our ways of life were implemented? How many being put in those spaces? And to see how many people are so ready to defend the honor of Miss Harris, I'm disappointed. I'm very disappointed. But that's only a piece of my disappointment. I'm disappointed with the conduct at large. What's going on? Let's really talk about it. What's going on? What is really at the core of where our quote unquote community stands? Where are we? Because I had a moment, as I may have said before, I don't remember, but I'm going to say it again. I had a moment where I had lost faith. I lost my zeal. I lost my drive to be in the fight. Which fight am I talking about? The fight for us, the fight for betterment, the fight for forward. Iteration going crazy. The fight to see this platform right here, this one that you're listening to right now, is for us, first and foremost. And it just left me wondering, what's going on? Why I felt like the progress, the forward movement has been halted. Maybe there's even some regression. And I really couldn't stomach it all. And so for a moment, I lost that faith. I was disillusioned, like so many Gen Z men are right now, who feel disconnected, who feel out of place, who feel that they have lost their essence and their importance. We're going to come back to that. So that's a part of the source of my disappointment. I had a conversation earlier today with a very enlightened young lady. We typically have very enlightened conversation, and today was no different. And in our conversation, covered a whole lot of these points. And so I want to step back and I just want to analyze and assess again, break it down like amino acids. And let's see if any of it starts to click, if any of it is just making sense. Because maybe I'm missing something. And so during our conversation, we both had a general consensus that there seems to be this disconnect where we as the community believe that we have all this essence. We built this country. You have these great abilities and this great influence to change worlds and change cultures, which is all very true, but somehow still don't have enough insight to realize that the exploitation that's taking place on a day-to-day that's impeding that progress is occurring. To not see and understand, not enough of us, that is. Of course, you still have the boule class. You still have the black intellectuals. They still exist. And they exist in their spaces, in their own little bubble, but there doesn't seem to be that connect happening with the masses. What I like to call the bread and butter Americans, the black bread and butter Americans. I'm not seeing the connection there, but there seems to be this lack of understanding, this lack of clarity that the exploitation is what's keeping us there, what's fortifying the barriers that are in place. What am I talking about? We were discussing, and I was stating my great frustration with those of you that continue to engage in this culture war and sense, in this petty, nonsensical back and forth, in this black woman versus black man narrative. Black man and the black woman are not against each other. Let me say it again. The black man and the black woman are not against each other. You are hearing things from people who are baiting you into a certain level of disillusionment and upset and anger and frustration because they're tapping into your insecurities. They're tapping into that PTSD, and not just the standard Vietnam War kind, but we're also talking about PTSD, that post-traumatic slave disorder that we all have. And some of y'all don't like to acknowledge it. Some of y'all are trying to get to therapy right now to address it. Some of y'all done already had kids and you've already passed on that trauma and you've already made it another generational curse and still haven't acknowledged it. But let's go ahead and just get it out there and let's keep it $120. That PTSD, they still stoking that flame. They still poking. You just keep going for it. Creating these narratives and irritating those parts of the culture and our mind state that we still haven't entirely healed and developed from. And y'all still going for it. You still getting in these online spaces. You still getting up on these platforms and you showing your ass based off of what's going on in that space. And we're going to get to it momentarily about the issue with engaging in that virtual space in the way that the conduct is there. But let's stay focused right here for a second. There's no reason that all of us, most of us, because you can't save everybody, most of us aren't in that understanding, that most of us don't see that exploitation, know that it's happening, acknowledge that it's happening, and are actively trying to fight it. There's no good reason. Because see, that black unity, that black magic that we like to talk about so much, that warrior spirit, that black love, all that beautiful blackness with all the essence and the sweet, delicious juices that are supposed to drip off of it, we can't even properly attain and enjoy because we're infighting, because there's bickering, because there's degradation internally, which is being stoked so that while we're distracted with that nonsense, those that are inciting that very internal conflict are building in between, on top of, next to, and around us, and then progressing past us and building it right off of our essence while we are still stuck debating what? While we still spend time trying to break down other people who are still trying to claw their way up. You don't see how that's PTSD? You don't see that post-traumatic sleep disorder right there? How we all gotta be out in the field together? Because one of us became the house nigga, so now it's all hate. Y'all don't see these cycles of how you see that someone makes it up there, and when they make it up there, they turn their back on the rest and start shitting on black people as a collective. You don't see how that's all part of the game, how that's all socially engineered, and how that comes all the way back to where we started in the political space, how they will march out those that supposedly look at, they will march out those that look like us, to lecture us, to shame us, to berate us, to say that we owe them. How is that not cloning the same experience, just in a different fur? Are we really not seeing it? Are we not understanding? So then we got to talk about that socially engineered virtual space. Now, I've said it on this platform before, and I will say it again, and I will keep saying it. That internet shit, that virtual space, that socially engineered alternate reality is not real. It's not real. It's not real. The engagement that's happening there, the conversations and supposed debates that are happening there, they're not real. They're not real people. In some cases, quite literally, they're not real people. There are algorithms and bots that are being used to stoke your internal flame, to tap into your insecurities, to channel that anger that you have from generations of things that you don't even realize you're still dealing with. And for those that are doing it, that look like us, that are real people, do you not see where they're getting their enjoyment? When you give them that engagement, you're giving them dollars. You're still elevating them beyond us. Going back to house nigga type of experience. Made it up there comfortable in the house cooking food for the master. That's what we're making ourselves look like. But you don't see it yet? I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed because I thought, I was under the impression that we were there, that we got it, that we understood. But then I also have asked for a long time, where are the real thought leaders? Where are those that are actually trying to coalesce a movement and push us forward? Where are our W.E.B. Du Bois? Where are our Medgar Evers? Where are our Malcolm X Littles? Where are they? Where are they? Because as far as I can see, we don't have any at the moment. And I have to wonder if that's part of the reason why. I have to wonder if it's just not connecting, if it's just not clicking, or what. Are we focusing on things that we don't need to be focusing on? Are we wasting that energy and that essence on things that just don't warrant it? At what point does it end? At what point does the true uprising happen? Because let me say this, in case this isn't abundantly clear, and this goes to the younger cohort, for my fellow Zers, as well as some of you, for some of you younger millennials. The shit that goes on and the conversations that happen in that online space are not real. That's not what real people are talking about. Those bread and butter, those black bread and butter Americans, they're not talking about that shit. They're not debating with that shit. I need you to come out, I need you to disconnect, and I need you to tap back in with real people. I need you to tap in with your real bread and butter Americans. So let me tell you something. I talk to these people. I meet these people. I speak to and I meet beautiful black couples all the time. Wonderful black people all the time, young, old, in between. And I look at them and I speak to them and I assess and understand, what are they really focusing on? What are they really thinking about? Is there any overlap between what's happening in these online conversations? It's not. Predominantly, black men still prefer black women and vice versa. That's real. Do you know what internally black men and black women are really debating? What people in black couples are really discussing? They're not talking about whether or not you're invalidating the struggle of the black woman and her feelings and so on and so forth. Are you serving your purpose? Are you bringing in 6 figures? Well, actually, no. The 6 figures is relevant. They're talking about, how are we going to get this money as a collective? How are we going to surpass the curses and the systemic practices that are putting us behind? Us. They say us as in me as a black man and you as the black woman is keeping us down. How are we going to coalesce? How are we going to bring those energies together and surpass that? How are we going to break through those ceilings? That's a debate. How can we pull our community together so they also understand that we can do it together? That's what they're talking about. Tap in. Come back. Because the real shit that's happening, that exploitation, that's where you need to focus. These people get in these positions and they get on these platforms and that's what they focus on. That's what they focus on. And I don't even want to address this and bring this up because I'm not even really interested in this issue, but I'm going to address it this way. Sean Diddy Combs situation that's happening right now, the fallout that's happening with that, all of the conversation and zeitgeist surrounding that, I need you to pay attention because there's a reason that the downfall is happening now, when it's happening, how it's happening. People have known for years, for decades, what was going on behind the scenes. We've seen it. You're now seeing the clips, the conversations, the interviews. People have been talking about it. They've known open secrets. So now suddenly the house of cards is collapsing? Absolutely not. It was a time and a place. It was chosen to happen now. I need y'all to pay attention. This is part of the exploitation. Now, that's not to say that what's happening to him isn't justified. He doesn't deserve it. Get that devious nigga out of here. With all the damage he has done to however many people came around him and within that circle in those spaces. But understand, it's happening now and it's happening when it's happening to divert the attention of the black masses away from whatever's about to happen next. Whatever great policy change. When I say great, I don't mean fantastic. I mean great as in large, major, impactful. Policy change is about to happen. However many more dollars they're about to pull out of black pockets. Or what do they call them? The black jobs? Whatever the fuck that is. Whatever switcheroo is about to happen, it's to distract from that. Because it's being orchestrated and it's being lined up right now. You think it's a coincidence that these things are happening as close as they are to the elections? You think that these people in these spaces don't have the ability to adjust the timelines of when these things happen? It's the federal government we're talking. I need you to pay attention. That's why my disappointment is so great. So let's take a moment. Let's take a break. And when we come back, I want to expand a little bit more. I feel that I didn't take the last one seriously, but really I can only show you better than I can tell you. I'm done being cute. Now hold on there, BV. Before you snap, let me put on my radio announcer voice. Every word is out now exclusively on the Menstruction Media channel from the upcoming album. I meant every word. So I guess I gotta turn in the phase of life. Better check the profile like you knew which way to swipe. Quick, let me get this off my chest. I'm not gonna rap faster cause I'd run out of inspiration. Subvert your expectation like MF Doom, TNT lines. Over there. Are you following on your favorite streaming platform? I see. Okay. Did you know there's a Patreon where you get, the exclusive stuff, the tracks, the rest of the notable quotable episodes. Oh, you just know everything, huh? Okay. Okay. Get back to it then. Now, as I said earlier, I was having a conversation with a young lady, and she had said to me that she's speaking to a young man, a young black man that I guess she had some romantic dealings with or had some kind of relationship with, and said that they were having a discussion which eventually turned into a disagreement, and that he said to her something along the lines of, and that's the problem with black women. They ask for too much. They require too much, so much more than women of other races. And she was proceeding to share her experience and her perspective as to why she felt that that was unfair and defend that position. And I interrupted and I said, I actually agree. I agree with the essence of what he's saying. And stopped her cold in her commentary, slowed it all the way down, silence. And after a beat, she then came back and she asked and she said, is that something to the effect of you agree with him? Is that actually what you believe? And I said yes. And I explained how, to me, it makes sense to say that American black women seem to have more requirements or seem to ask more of black men than certain other races of women. That's not unreasonable to me, because consider the history, consider the circumstance, consider the things that black Americans in general have had to suffer, but especially the impact that has taken on black women and the aftershock effects of all those things, of how black women have historically been treated, how fetishized black women still are, how they somehow have to ride that line between being femme fatales but also agreeably feminine, how they have to try to maintain some degree of a European standard of beauty while having traditionally Afrocentric features, while having to exist in spaces where they might not be surrounded by other women that look like them, and even when they are, there isn't necessarily a connection or a community there. Never truly being able to be oneself freely. Why shouldn't a black woman ask a little bit more? Why shouldn't she require a little bit? So I said, for those reasons, I don't find that unreasonable, nor do I find that unlikely. I would agree with the gentleman that, yes, I'm sure they do. And then that led me down the thought process of, well, why would we consider that an issue? Why is there a debate surrounding? Then I walked it back and I broke it down, and I was thinking, there's no way that it couldn't be like this, given the circumstances. Because right now we live in very scary times. We're at an apex of seeing the true culmination of the aftershock effects of so many policies and programs and individuals who put things in place to separate, to denigrate, to break up the black family. We're seeing the true effects, the aftershock effects, to things like the disproportionately high incarceration rate of black men due to all kinds of overinflated, trumped up charges for small crimes like marijuana possession and so on and so forth. We now have had enough time and have had enough generations spawned to see what the full aftershock ramifications of those kinds of things are. And what it has done effectively is what it has set out to do initially, very successfully, to not only continue to keep the black family disintegrated and thus keep the morale low and thus keep our ability to unify and understand and respect and honor and cherish one another essentially non-existent, but to do even more than that, the bigger impact being disillusioning and completely separating the black man and the black woman from their roles within their relationships, within their families, and within each other's lives. Because the conclusion that I came to when I was having this conversation earlier with this young woman, the conclusion that all of the things that we were discussing and all of these different finer points brought me back to is a lot of this infighting and this belief and this internal hatred between each other comes from the black man not knowing his place and the black woman not knowing her place. And I'm not saying knowing your place as in you need to fall into specific gender roles. I mean literally not knowing where you're supposed to fit in within your familial structure, within your social structure. What is your role? Where do you belong? We now have a generation, and we've had a few before, but now it seems like we really have a generation of black Americans who so much so don't know where their position is supposed to be, what role they're supposed to play, what their importance and significance is, that something as small as having expectations is irritating. Something as minor as having a presence in your family's life, in your child's life, is seen as an anomaly, to an extent where it's even seen as unwanted and undesirable. The data has existed for some time that the rates of black marriages have decreased, but the birth rates of black children has not, meaning that there has been an influx, an increase in single parent household, to the point where we live in a time now where it almost seems like the norm, the expectation is to be a single mom. It is encouraged to be a single mom, single dad, to be a single parent, to remove the essence and the importance, the structure that a black man is supposed to offer. And then I really thought about what she was saying to me as well, that there were certain things that she would desire, or that black women at large would desire, that he had an issue with. As I was thinking about it, I was saying to her, well, that makes sense. I can understand why you would feel that way. I can understand why a lot of black men would come out and say those things and feel that way, because in our heart of hearts, we know, and this is the hard truth to swallow, we cannot fulfill those requirements. We cannot fulfill those expectations. Because on a base level, really I think it's wrapped up in our biology, on our base level as men, we have to produce. We have to produce. That's the essence of what makes us us. That's what drives us internally in our biological mechanism. We have to produce. We have to create. I hesitate to say provide, because you can still have a very stable familial structure without a man being a sole provider. We have seen that. We are seeing that. But you have to produce. You have to develop. You have to create. And when you don't have the opportunity to do that, because you're behind financially, you're behind economically, you're behind educationally, that takes away from your feeling, your understanding of importance, your essence, your desirability, the belief that you're needed and that you need to be where you are. So that's a part of the frustration. But then there's also the part of, as a man, as most men, we want to provide the world for our romantic partner. There's not one black man that I have ever spoken to in my life, young, old, rich, or poor, from all kinds of backgrounds, those that have been incarcerated, those that have been married for 25 plus years. There's not one that I've ever spoken to that didn't say, given the opportunity with the right resources in the right places at the right time, that with the right partner, they wouldn't give that individual the world. There's not one. And so it makes sense that when you know, due to the disparities that have been thrust upon you, that you cannot provide that, of course you're going to be upset. You're going to be upset internally first. But then it's also going to turn into an external expression of, I'm upset that you're expecting things of me because I'm projecting, because internally I know that I can't provide. And it's upsetting, and it leads to that friction. That's the real friction. If we're really going to talk about this black woman versus black man narrative, that's part of the real friction. Not being able to fulfill the needs that we know we need to fulfill because we've been placed so far behind structurally. And then going back to what I was saying earlier about the expectations of the black woman, of course there's going to be some frustration there, because you have also had generations of women before you, your mom and her mom and her mom, who have held up the family, who have been the head matriarchs, who have put everything on their backs and have been the mother, the father, the provider, the educator, the one to console in times of emotional turmoil, all of it. You've seen it for generation and generation, to the point that you now believe you can do it on your own. You don't need a male figure. But then if you're going to have a strong male figure come into your life, well, there's a litany of things that need to come with it. There's a litmus test to really qualify you to be in that position. I can understand why that's frustrating, but you also have to understand, as a black woman, why that's difficult for a black man. Not that you shouldn't maintain those requirements, not that that shouldn't be the case, but why that's frustrating, why that can be upsetting. Because you're asking for a lot, and it's not that you're not justified in asking for it. It's just that it's a lot more that can actually be provided. It's just that it's a lot more than we can even do for ourselves. Because the key is, you got to be able to do for you before you can even begin to provide for anybody. And that's the reality we're living in. That's where this historical curve has brought us. But then you add in the added force of the internet with its grand ability to fabricate and generate these artificial realities, and you get this complete warping of reality where you see people who are in these big power playing positions, who have this money, who look like us, who seem to be in happy, developed, beautiful black relationship. And you look at them and you say, well, that's not the majority. That's not the standard. So if they made it, why can't we? And that's the mentality that it all comes back to. Black women making these successes, black women being in these positions to hold things up. If she thinks, if I can do it, why can't you? And the reality is, there's a whole lot of reasons why can't we. Not excuses, but actual historical examples of why the disparity exists and why the provider that you want is just going to take some time and some real genuine efforts to develop. It takes some help. That's where we are. We exist in that time now. So we have to really get to that understanding and that enlightenment. There's too many of us that are not there. There's too many of us that are not acknowledging those realities. There's too many of us who aren't acknowledging the PTSD, the post-traumatic slave disorder that's still gripping us to this day. There's too many of us. It has to be acknowledged. That's where my disappointment comes in, because now bringing it full circle, you have these individuals who are in these spaces, who have made it to these public official positions, who have the ability to affect these policies and changes to start to break some of that, to break some of those generational curses, who claim to have gone through the same adversities that we are very actively trying to seek solace from, and who don't do a goddamn thing to change anything about it, but you still go and give them your vote. You still go out and support these people. You still engage with these conversations, these platforms, pushing these agendas that are only serving to fortify the very structures that we're talking about, the very roadblocks that we have had to encounter. That's where my disappointment comes. Because if you know better, you do better. And so you have to ask at some point, do you know better? And if you don't, why don't you? There are far too many historical examples. There's far too much data. I just laid out a very small piece of it. Why don't you get it? We're not helpless. We're not lost. We are not without resources. It seems that we're without vision and maybe some initiative. You might be asking yourself, okay, BV, fine. I hear what you're saying. It's making some degree of sense. What makes you any better? You're here running your mouth about these things just the same. We're on your platform listening to you, yeah. But what's the answer? What are the solutions? For one thing, those reparations that have been discussed far too many times but have not developed any real progress, that needs to happen. I don't have the exact data in front of me right now about the numbers of how much wealth was generated during the time of American slavery in dollars of just overall generational wealth that could have and should have been created by the labor of our ancestors. That would close a whole lot of that disparity, but that's effectively work with no pay. That's where those reparations come in. That's back pay, okay? That's back pay. That needs to come through. That's part of it. There's a lot of our differences, a lot of this tension. It's cultural, clearly, a lot of it. But cultures take a very long time to shape and change. But a lot of it is also economic, which can be solved a little bit quicker, a little bit more efficiently. Getting ourselves into a place of stability economically changes a lot of things. It changes how we interact with each other. It changes how we go about these kinds of conversations. It changes how we go about revering each other. It changes how we structure our families, our household. All of those things change. Doesn't fix it entirely, but it's a damn good start. Who's the candidate that's pushing for? Who are the individuals that are speaking for that? Who are the ones that are even in the corner of such program? That's where the conversations need to be happening. That's where the support needs to go. That's where the votes need to go. If you want our positions and voices to be heard, we have to support those that are actually pushing. Because let me end on this. Getting caught up in that identitarianism of those that look like us, as I said earlier, they're not like us, or they are like us. We're past that. We should be past that. Again, there are too many historical examples of those that supposedly look like us that ain't like us. They not for us. When are you going to see past and have enough of that insight to realize that it's greater than black and white? Shouts out to Lil Baby. It's bigger than that. You can't at the same time say that you're about things that that supersede racism, that supersede separating us based upon your color and racial identity, but at the same time maintain the mindset, the thought processes that feed into those very same programs and structures. You can't speak out of both sides of your mouth. Like, if we're really trying to supersede, if we're really trying to go beyond it, then we got to get with it. The fear is there. I'm aware. Where are the fearless at? When are we going to stop hiding behind those who continue to lie and slap us in our face and tell us that we owe them our political power, that we owe them our vote just because they look like us? Let me leave you with this. For those of you that are familiar with Tulsa, Oklahoma, the Black Wall Street, as it was, where the black dollar made its rounds more so than the actual Wall Street at the time. Where we had our own economic safe haven, and it was prosperous. First black millionaire, and it was massacred. It was torn down by American citizens, other American citizens, internally, bombed, burned down to the ground. At a time where social relations were different, the rights that were entitled to us as black people were different. Shit, the expectations and pinnacles of what we could achieve were different. But we made it possible for us. Why is it that we've never had another? It's been over 100 years. Why has that never happened? Is it actually because of the systemic racism? Is it actually because of all the aforementioned obstacles? Is they existed then and arguably had more force then than they do now? Or are we responsible for our destiny in the direction that we move? Are we the reason that Tulsa didn't happen again? This has been another episode of Menstruction, the place where the people, the brothers, the sisters, and all those cohorts that ally, fortify the structure that is you, incorporated that, help develop the beneficial bricks that make you who you need to be, but also build the structures that get us to where we need to be. I go by Black Velvet, and I love each and every one of you. Peace.